The most important thing you're going to do on your website as soon as anyone lands, you have 5 seconds. That's it. To capture their attention, one, for them to decide if they are in the right place, two, and for them to decide if they agree and align with what you are saying to them. So the most important thing that you can do in that header is to create a powerful statement. And what I like to do with these statements is to position them from the point of what problem am I solving for my audience, right? Unless you're some, super well-known brand and you've got a title that you want to put out there, sure. But if you are, an industry expert, that means that you're an expert in solving a problem that people have, whatever that problem is. Position your writing from that place, not what benefits you offer people, but from what is the problem that you're solving for your client. That's one of the most powerful ways to answer those three questions of, do I have their attention? Do they think they're in the right place? And do they agree and align with who I am? Why that's such an important piece and why you see it on so many websites, and even people that are building their own websites, they've started to take this hack and put what we call like a credibility bar up top. It's because people want to get that instant validation of this person is trusted. We have lost so much trust in the last couple decades with the movement of everything online, and so many, we've all been scammed by somebody. We've all had, our emails be clogged up with spam. There's just this barrier of trust that we have to break through with as personal brands and as business brands. So what that credibility bar does up top is it gives you, these are people that we've either worked with before or that we've been featured by. You can trust us, we are real. It calms the nervous system and allows you to evaluate their message instead of their meaning of, is this someone that I can trust or not? You start being able to connect and put your guard down a bit when you have that credibility bar.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Crowd Create podcast, where we bring on thought leaders to help you grow your business. Something in particular that I've always been interested in is personal branding. And so we've heard stories of how companies really, when they tweet something on behalf of the company account or they tweet on behalf of the personal account, a lot of times the personal account will get more exposure and reach because people are essentially buying from other people. And when people search for your name, a lot comes online, and Brand Alchemy would love for you to introduce yourself. I heard great things about your firm and just would love for you to just share any valuable insights when it comes to personal branding and marketing.
My name is Csia. I am the CMO and creative director at Brand Alchemy. And we've had the absolute pleasure of building out some of the most fun, authentic, and inspiring brands for leaders and entrepreneurs from all over the country. We love to help experienced thought leaders, those are the people that we tend to work with, to really elevate their brand so that their persona, the person that they are online, matches their expertise. We often take people through this kind of identification to really see where the gap is. And if you are one of the leading experts in your field, is that how you're received and how you're perceived online? And if not, there's a big opportunity there that you could be missing to, achieve the success that you want, to speak on more stages, to get your book into the right publisher. There's this gap that can exist, and that's what we believe your personal brand, or we know that your personal brand can really help you in closing that gap to create the success that you want.
Yeah, 100%. And to brag a little bit on Csia, Csia is an incredible brand strategist, creative director, creative strategist. She's worked with some of the top people in, just in thought leadership, and that's funny. So it's like we don't, at the end of the day, we're more of like, we don't call ourselves a personal branding agency. We're more a thought leadership agency in the sense that we're not about like people dancing in their underwear on TikTok. We're not about like people just getting followers for the sake of getting followers. It's about the impact that they're creating. And yeah, Cia's worked with some of the most notable names in thought leadership, including, I think you're about to launch Dave Asprey's next iteration of his brand. So been working with him for a few years. She's worked with some really big names, and I love having her on client calls and just seeing her work her magic. Yeah, myself, I'm Carey James. I originally got into this space. My background's in neuroscience. I actually studied neuroscience in school, and after that, I was planning on being the good nerd that I was, going into the world of academia and research. Was applying for PhDs and all that, and I was lucky enough to work with some really smart, really great researchers in neuroscience. They had a clinic in LA. It was out of UCLA was where their clinic was, where they got all their funding. And then they wanted to go. They basically wanted take. And this was back when actually Dave Asprey got big. This is when he started kicking off. The founders that I was working with, they were doing projects with Dave Asprey, Alpha Brain and True Brain. If you guys know those companies, they worked doing research for them. Um, Basically pioneered some different protocols in neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is like brain training. Long story short, I did the thing. I went and learned how to code the statistical software and was in the lab. But then that transferred over to me wanting to get this stuff out into the market, and I was like, I'm not going to live a life where I just work on research all day, every day, and it doesn't see the world. So then I started getting into the business of science, essentially. And that led to, working with these doctors, getting them booked on, top podcasts, getting them on TED Talks, helping them write books, that kind of thing. And then just since then, over the past decade plus, have kind of continued that on, working with some really, really great thought leaders from entrepreneurship, people that are starting companies that are changing the world in different ways, people that are scientists giving keynote speeches, um, across the spectrum. But the number one thing, and this is when we filter for the clients that we decide to work with, the number one thing is they have to be an expert. There's way too many nonsense experts out there that actually don't know what they're talking about, so we actively filter for that. Number two, they have to be one of the good guys, as Csia likes to call them. They actually have to be, out there looking to make a positive impact in the world. And then three, they have to be looking to grow. Like some people, I've met people that are they've been in the research world for years, or they've been doing what they're doing, but they're totally fine keeping a low profile. They're totally fine playing it small. Whereas the people that we get most excited about working with are the ones that are like, nah, I got way more to offer this world than what I'm currently given. So it's a passion project. Um, and we keep, the further we go into this world and this territory, the more we learn about ourselves, obviously, but it's the more we learn about just what does it take to actually rise through the noise these days, because there's so much noise out there. There's so much what is it going to take to be able to see past, find the signal through the noise is what I call it. It's what is the actual pieces, the actual messages that are out there that are actually worth listening to.
When I think about these personal, thought leaders, do you actually have links to websites that I can pull up? Because I'd love to see you, even like a before and after, or just the way that you think about it, and just any, individual that would be a good fit for what you do. Because I've seen the way that you even analyze myself and my own personal brand, which I never even thought about until we hopped on that initial discovery call, and I was extremely impressed. And even if you have that, but I'd love if you can just kind of share. Yeah, are there any visuals that people can see?
So with us, it's like branding. We really look at branding in three different dimensions, or three different brands that exist. Um, Preface is that you definitely have a brand, whether you know it or not. Your personal brand exists. Whether or not you're actually having an intentional personal brand or just something left to the wind, that's another thing. But essentially what we do, we figure out the offline brand, what their reputation, with the people that they've worked with in the past, how people know them, how they show up to a meeting in person, that kind of thing, versus their online brand. Like what happens when you Google them? When you Google them, are they the same person that you see when you see in real life? Is there a difference? What's the delta? What's the gap there? So this one, for example, right here, Dr. Lisa Fost, she's a warrior for independent pharmacy owners, which they're used to. I don't know the exact numbers. My team knows her way better than, or these numbers way better than I do. But essentially, it's there used to be an insane amount of independent pharmacists in the U.S., and now they've just been getting clobbered for the past decade by your Walgreens, by your Amazon, et cetera. But she's a big advocate for entrepreneurship, for business ownership, and she's leading the way in the pharmacy space to allow people to keep their pharmacies and to still strive, to make their business work for them, that kind of thing. Kind of like your Cody Sanchez, if you will, if you're familiar with her. So yeah, that's one. Go through a few more here. Shaun T, Yeah. So one of our strategists, Bayardo, he built this out. He's an incredible writer, and that's what Shaun T was looking for when wanting to work together. Was essentially he was looking for somebody that really understood him at his core, because he has a very unique fitness brand compared to a lot of the brands out there. He's created Insanity, created T25. It's on the hip hop side of things. It's different than your typical fitness brand. Long story short, the Bayardo worked with him and helped him figure out who he was at his core, his identity, and how he wanted that to be in the world. That came into visual expression, how that wanted to be conveyed. And long story short, yeah, it's like we work with people across the spectrum, but it's mostly people, like I said, they're one of the good guys. They are an expert, and they're looking to go big. And that's what
Nice.
this individual was trying to do.
Yeah, so I grew up, using these Insanity workout tapes and then, getting
Yeah.
to know the person now after the fact, but I had to do some research on my own. So almost, yeah, walk us through an individual like Shaun T. The brand's known as Insanity, and then now he seems like he's branching out, doing his own personal. So how do you envision, like, what's the marketing process that you would do for somebody like him?
Well, a lot of the times these thought leaders, they're usually coming to us as like mini influencers in a way. What takes them to thought leadership is how deep people know them. Like what is the depth of their audience understanding of who they are. So a lot of times they'll come in and it's like, this is their resume, this is the things that they've done, versus like, how do you actually go and become a part of Shaun T's world? How do you go and like, what are the things that got him to be who he is today? The specific, the hero's journey. Some people call it a conversion narrative, but the hero's journey that he had to take to transform, as you can see here, the transformation that got him to become. And that's essentially what the reason they become a member of your tribe is because they know that hero's journey. They know the steps that you took to get to where you are. And without that, a lot of the times personal brands just fall flat. People will just keep it very basic. They'll keep it very sterile. They'll be like, oh, I worked at this company, I came from this town, and that's it. But it's when you go a few layers deeper, like we did with Shaun T, that's when you're able to like actually meet the man behind the curtain, essentially.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah,
I'll go through
I
a
guess.
few and then go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Like, what are some of the mistakes that most people, when they are personally branding themselves, make that
Yeah,
you've seen? Like, as you mentioned, not going deep enough, being more sterile. But yeah, like,
yeah,
what are some of the?
yeah. So I mean, there's definitely a lot of mistakes, and I want to get Cia's feedback here, and I'll actually do it through the lens of this next one that I'm showing you. So this is Dr. Stephanie Willerth. She is a world-leading expert on bioprinting. So she actually prints human brains, human hearts, human tissue. She has a company that bioprints, like she sells bioprinting ink, essentially. And long story short, when she first came to us, and we're actually still working on here, we're getting her like some appearances, et cetera, here soon. But a lot of the things that we find, especially with people in academia, people that come from like these more like doctors, et cetera, they come from these backgrounds where they're not, they have imposter syndrome. Like this woman here has published over 200 research papers on the subject of bioprinting, neurotissue engineering. She's like without a doubt top of her field, but coming in working with us, she wasn't really sure that she was, that she was qualified to be telling people that she's a world leading expert. They come in with imposter syndrome essentially, and I wouldn't say that's a mistake. That's just a common thing that we see, is that people, they're like, they have a career of experience, they're doing better than anybody out there in their field, but they're just not. They're scared of playing, of going to the next stage and like playing big, and it's usually because they suffer from what I call the label in the bottle effect. They're inside the bottle and they can't see what the label is on the outside. And everybody, if you think about this, if you try to write your about me section on MySpace in 2005. It's like everybody has struggled with this. They've all tried to like summarize themselves in a way. I mean, your Tinder profile when you're in a dating app, like all of this, everybody struggles with this. And it's the label and the bottle effect. And it's just simply because you are inside your own narrative. It's hard to see who you are as a product from the outside. Who is the human from the outside? Because you're blind, you're in it. You know what I mean? So those are two of the things we often see at the beginning. And I'll let Cia jump in.
Yeah, that was going to be the first thing that I said. The biggest mistake that I see, Jeffrey, is people really trying to do it themselves. And it's not a mistake to try, but they're not going to, as Carey is saying, they're not going to be able to package themselves up in a way that they can detach from, that they can make good decisions on
Mm-hmm.
how do I want to present myself? Because it's so vulnerable and raw, and it's hard to remove yourself from your own evaluation of yourself. So that's the biggest thing that I would see. Beyond that, when they do, they've worked with other companies and they've tried to put brands together in the past. Where I see a gap is they're trying to get a quick fix and just get some colors, have it be very superficial. And that's where there's going to be a limit to how far that type of superficial brand can take you. When you actually spend the time to go deep and you start to really understand how you want to build the foundation of your personal brand. What do I actually stand for? What is it in a way that I can remember it and share it with people? How do I want to come off? What do I want to embody in my brand, in the clothing that I'm wearing, in the colors that I'm putting for? What is that energy? When you go into that level of depth, it actually sticks, and you won't have that same ceiling on top of you in future as if you were to do it on the superficial level. You can take your brand further and further, higher and higher, because you've done that deep foundational work. That some stuff might come and go, but you're starting to attract people who are along for the journey on a deeper level, and they have that connection and they start to build trust, which is what allows you to really amplify your voice.
Wow, that's great.
It's the 100 true fans. And just to illustrate this, it's like, I won't mention names, but we've been on calls before where Csia is doing a brand reveal. And because we've gone through such depths to figure out the core of who this human being is, people have gotten emotional. They've cried on these calls because they feel so seen, so known, and so understood. I call it the cry test. And that's like, if we're passing the cry test with this client, there's not all of them get emotional, but it's like we've had this happen before. And the reason why this is so important is because when your brand feels like it captures your essence in such a way that it makes you emotional, then that's what's going to happen to the audience. That's what's going to happen to, you're going to go from just a random website with a resume on it to an actual movement. You will collect tribe members. Tribe members will see the real you and they'll be like, oh, wow, this is my vibe. This is what I want to be on this train, a part of this.
And this is what personal branding is meant for, is to, when we think about it, your personal brand is just taking your authentic self and finding a way to make yourself online authentic as well. It's just a rebottling of that. So we're trying to, in what we do with personal brands, we're trying to make your online self as close to your in-person authentic self, that energy that you give off when you meet somebody in a room.
Yeah.
What is that? And how can we bottle it up in a way using all of these things of, the words that we're using, the energy, the colors, the lighting, to really create this representation of what it looks like to meet you in person, but just online. There's a really very powerful health influencer that I've worked with in the past. He's a household name, many different products that he's created, and has scaled many companies to millions and possibly even billions. He had a brand identity issue where the brand that he was putting out was being received in a way that he's a little too pushbacky. He's a little bit too, he can turn people the wrong way, right? There was something, he's a successful entrepreneur. So this is not an uncommon problem. They can be a little bit pushy in their ideas and what they want to create and build. So I looked at his brand to assess, where was the issue and where was the discrepancy? And I watched a lot of his content and found that this is who he is. He is a deeply passionate person who really, really cares about the health and wellness of the people in our country. And he's so passionate about it that he can come off as a little abrasive. And if that's who he is, why aren't we owning that? Why aren't we infusing that fire, that color, that vibrancy of who he is into his personal brand? If he's edgy, people will love that if he owns it. But it's the brand putting out something different than who he is that creates this discrepancy and can create this issue where I'm not buying it because it's not authentic. Who you really are and who you're saying you are online are two different people. So no, I don't like this. We saw such an incredible shift in the comments and the engagement of the work that we were putting out when we did redo this person's personal brand, because we brought them into alignment. We brought those colors through. We brought through the vibrancy and the strong language that he uses authentically, so that his online brand matched who he is in person. You're not getting pushback anymore. People embrace who he is. And we've seen such a deeper connection with the audience online as a result.
I imagine the products as well that he's selling. It's like it's different. Different people buy for different reasons, and when they know the person, they buy more essentially.
And I would say, Jeffrey, this goes into another issue that we see with branding, is that people might not want to get specific, quote unquote, specific with their brand and their choices, because they want to appeal to everybody. And this is such a marketing faux pas, right? That if you're appealing to everybody, you know what I'm about to say, you're really appealing to nobody, because you're not claiming anything strong. You don't have a stance. And this is something we love to do with our personal brands, is find out what people stand for and make it a core part of their message, because we'd rather have you repelling some people and attracting the right people than everyone being lukewarm about who you are in your personal brand.
That's great. You know, I noticed in terms of the framework and format for most personal brand website, usually, striking tagline at the top, some kind of call to action that really moves them, and then it has the press and media features, and then it has like a story or your origin story, and then it has a video. But yeah, can you break down what are the most important things that you want to convey on a web page for an individual, and what they should be thinking about, that even frequently asked questions on like, why would somebody be even Googling this person, or yeah, just kind of in general, like the framework?
Well, I'll tell you one of my my top secret Csia hacks for creating that header. The most important thing you're going to do on your website as soon as anyone lands, you have 5 seconds. That's it, to capture their attention. 1, for them to decide if they are in the right place. 2, and for them to decide if they agree and align with what you are saying to them. So the most important thing that you can do in that header is to create a powerful statement. And what I like to do with these statements is to position them from the point of, what problem am I solving for my audience, right? Unless you're some, super well-known brand and you've got a title that you want to put out there, sure. But if you are, an industry expert, that means that you're an expert in solving a problem that people have, whatever that problem is. Position your writing from that place, not what benefits you offer people, but from what is the problem that you're solving for your client. That's one of the most powerful ways to answer those 3 questions of, do I have their attention? Do they think they're in the right place? And do they agree and align with who I am?
I love it. And then how about like social proof? I noticed that you also do PR mentions. Like, what are some of like the background and just mechanics of how you go about building out personal brands?
And why that's, you can jump in on this one too. I want to say, Carey, why that's such an important piece, and why you see it on so many websites, and even people that are building their own websites, they've started to take this hack and put what we call like a credibility bar up top. It's because people want to get that instant validation of, this person is trusted. We have lost so much trust in the last couple decades with the movement of everything online, and so many, we've all been scammed by somebody. We've all had, our emails be clogged up with spam. There's just this barrier of trust that we have to break through with, as personal brands and as business brands. So what that credibility bar does up top is it gives you, these are people that we've either worked with before or that we've been featured by. You can trust us. We are real. It calms the nervous system and allows you to evaluate their message instead of their meaning of, is this someone that I can trust or not? You start being able to connect and put your guard down a bit when you have that credibility bar.
Yeah. I want to add to that, and that's just like to zoom out. Like, what is personal branding at the end of the day? It's trust. It's building trust. And a lot of people think like, oh, there's just a few different layers of trust. But when you think about it, like some of the best personal brands out there, and I got to pick on him regardless of where you stand, but Elon Musk, it's like this guy has arguably the best personal brand in the world. He has arguably, like, everybody knows him. They know this individual. And because of who they trust him, so that's why his company's worth so much, and a lot of people are buying stuff. But also now people are boycotting his products because of who he is, because of the personal brand of the founder of the company. People are making decisions more and more and more by who the founder is and what their personal brand is all about. They are, because of the lack of trust that's happening. There's AI bots out there. You don't even know who's human these days. There's fluff just left and right. There's fake news. There's info wars. There's all this stuff happening. And because of that, it becomes more and more important and vital. It's a matter of survival these days, getting your personal brand out there so that people know who you are, what you stand for, and are you the type of person they want to buy things from. That being said, yes, the credibility bar, yes, having a killer tagline on a site. In addition to the your presence online, like, you need to own the first page of Google. You need to attempt to, unless your name is John Smith, which is going to be a difficult one for you. There's still ways to get around that, but it's like, unless your name is John Smith, own the front page of Google. You get placed in PR, like in articles. You could get placed in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, all these entrepreneur, all that kind of stuff. Get featured in articles, get on stages, get on, go on people's YouTube channels and be like guest appearances on other people's YouTubes. Podcasts, that's a great thing. But what you want to do is just teach, and better than anybody, Jeff, for your SEO world. It's like, what you want to do is teach the internet how to treat you. Most people, they're treated like a line on a spreadsheet. You Google them, there might be a name or two or an entry or two that pops up. But the more you train Google how to treat you by having more appearances in different places that are highly authoritative, highly credible, also cohesive, like you're showing up the same way here as you're showing up over here in this other different website, then you're training Google to treat you like a thought leader. And they will start to give you the results of a thought leader. They'll start to give you like a knowledge panel. They'll start to give you like different features. You'll start to pop up for things that have nothing to do with you directly, but are adjacent keywords for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in terms of, one thing, like you said, is being as helpful as possible. And even for us, it's just to literally give away the secrets on how things are done.
Yeah.
And I'll pull this up because it's such a great example. But yeah, you mentioned it's a very strong tagline at the top. Trust and believe in the power of transformation. And then you have this credibility bar, which is typically PR media. And then I've noticed that you have a question to almost elicit some kind of action from the audience for most of the websites that you're building. And then next is, okay, here's how we're going to do it together. And then almost, hey, here's next steps. I'm guessing this is just kind of highlighting exactly what the product is. And then you have testimonials in that testimonial section. And then now you're going into like a call to action in terms of how to engage with the personal individual. And then now you just have deeper content, discover more. I'm guessing here everything from Facebook to YouTube to blogs. And I mean, you've definitely nailed it down to a science. And then here goes the origin story of saying, go and read their full story. I'm guessing of just how they went through it themselves and how, they can really relate to the problem. But yeah, it looks great. Truly. Just the overall color and branding's phenomenal.
Yeah, shout out to Bayardo Barrios on our team for that. He creative directed the whole thing here. Essentially, and if you see how it's actually displayed on the page, we have we're still figuring out our own proprietary name for it, but we have essentially the brand foundation pyramid. And a lot of people, you were asking the mistakes that people make, and a lot of times they go out and they start writing a book day one. Nobody knows who they are, and they're just going to write a best-selling book. They're going to go try to, at least. Or they'll go out and they'll just like be featured on every podcast imaginable. But what they skip, and this is why the order is so important to develop a very powerful brand, it's what they skip are these brand foundations. You notice on that page at the top, it was like the transformation of the client, number one. That's the most important. Then you saw his values peppered in. Who is he? How is he a part of my tribe, or is he something I don't want anything to do with? That kind of thing. And then you saw a little bit of the credibility, like, is he trustable? These are like very specific psychological choices that are being made, and it's representative of personal brand development with your career as a whole. A lot of people, they do it backwards. They go out and they're just like content all day, every day, and they don't even know who they are. They don't know what their values are. They don't know, they don't know what benefit that they give their clientele or the audience, the transformation that they're trying to achieve. And they also don't know, their story. Like, how do they present their story to people? It could be very powerful if done the right way, and it could be a huge turnoff if done the wrong way. So once you align those, essential brand foundations, and you get really, really tight on those, then all of these other efforts, they start making a lot of sense. Marketing makes sense. Sales makes sense. Hiring a social media agency to run your socials for you, then it makes sense, because you actually have a product. You have a human product to sell, essentially. So
if you had to choose like, one or two mediums to really get the point across and just express the personality, like what would you recommend that is?
Yeah, it depends on which one's going to be dismantled within the next couple months or not, But it just really depends on who you are and what type of audience you should be reaching. There's two main different types of clients that we work with. They're these people that are like kind of like they're industry experts, but they're transitioning to become a thought leader. And then there's the next one where they're already a thought leader, but they're looking to transform what space they are a thought leader in, like just basically a rebrand. So the people that are like igniting their brand for the first time, usually if they're coming from more of a corporate background, et cetera, LinkedIn is absolutely incredible. Like going out and getting your reps in on LinkedIn, essentially, that's where you're going to find, and if you're trying to monetize immediately, that's where you're going to find a lot of your clientele. You're going to do a lot of great networking, et cetera. However, if you're like not coming from a super corporate professional background, maybe you are in fitness, or maybe you are, maybe you're a writer and you have a very specific, subject that you write in that's like doesn't fit in a nice LinkedIn box. Then things like TikTok and Instagram are going to make more sense to get your content out there to where people can consume it in more amounts, and they're getting way more deeply involved in like the content behind the brand, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I look at it personally. I look at it as like, do you like video more or do you like writing more? Which one, like what's more powerful for you as an individual? Which one will you stick with your content strategy? So some people, they can talk all day, every day on video. Let's get them on YouTube Shorts. Let's get them on TikTok, and then, potentially Instagram. Other people, they can write books for days. They can just write amazing work. They can get their message out there, really nice pen and paper. Let's get them on let's get them on Twitter/X, and then let's get them on LinkedIn. That's where they're going to shine the most.
I love it. Yeah, so I guess just in a whole, just in summary, for anyone looking to build a personal brand, just kind of like in closing, you have any like words of wisdom for people out there? Also, like the best place for them to contact you and learn more?
Yeah, so I would say like words of wisdom is always, like I was mentioning, the order is really important. And a lot of people, like what breaks my heart the most is when I jump on a call with somebody. So we do audits for everybody that jumps on calls with us. We did one for you, Jeffrey, that same kind of process. So you want to get in contact with us, brandalchemy.io is our website, and you could get a free audit. And I'll have my team build an audit of you before you even go on the call. And then we'll jump on a call, we'll talk about it. And what I see most that breaks my heart on these calls is that people have been out there spending years, even decades of their life, and they're just like producing content on a wheel. Like we have one client, he has more YouTube videos than he does followers on his YouTube. And it's just like stuff like that, where they're just like, they're very ambitious, they're very like high output, but they just don't have the brand foundations in place. And that's what I mean by, it's like, yeah, go spend the time, write a book if that's what you're passionate about, make YouTube videos if that's what you're passionate about, but figure out who you are first is essentially what I'm trying to say. Figure out your brand foundation. What are you all about? What are your values? What's the area that you can offer the most value to your clientele, to your audience? And then from there, you can build a much more efficient, much more sticky machine. That's, your books are going to be stickier, your written content, your video content, all that's going to be better. And you're going to save a lot of time too. You're going to just be way more efficient with the trajectory of your career and your brand overall. See, what do you got?
That's what I was going to say too. We're reading each other's minds. Yeah, it's that it comes back to that foundation piece, because if you're putting out content and for whatever reason, it's not aligning with who you are, if we feel that gap in authenticity because you just haven't, put in the time to figure out the colors and the brand and the energy that represents who you are online. If you haven't put in that time to figure out who it is, it's going to come off as inauthentic, even if you don't mean it to. Even if you don't feel that you're being inauthentic in the photos that you're sharing or the posts that you're writing, it is that external perception of we don't know you like you know you. So we're reading into what we have or reading into the personal brand you are putting out. So if there is that gap in authenticity between who you are and the expertise that you have, it creates a trust issue. So you're not going to be able to grow. You're cutting yourself off from a lot of just organic growth because people aren't going to be able to resonate, connect with you.
What if somebody says to you, I don't know who I am and I don't know what area I can deliver the most value to people? How do you get that out of people?
Well, go ahead, Carey.
Well, no, it's like that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do. It's exactly
And
that.
me too. Perfect.
Yeah, and the label in the bottle effect, like I was saying before, it's like even what Csia and I were talking about the other day. Csia was like, "I think I'm ready for a rebrand myself," and I was like, "Well, obviously you're gonna kill it, but it's like even she and even myself, like we have to co-brand each other because we are inside our own narratives. It's really difficult to figure out to summarize yourself or distill your essence when it's you doing the distilling. It really is helpful. So this is, in short, obviously hire us. That's one first step to take. If that's not possible for you, then I would actually recommend co-interviewing with a friend and
Yeah.
go through a list of questions like what are your values, and you could just do this with your buddy, do it with your partner, whoever it is, and just have them interview you and then record that interview with GPT or whatever, ask it questions, and then maybe it can help you start at least to understand who you are with your identity. It's that outside perspective is where the gold is.
What are the top 5 questions that you would ask when you're
Yeah,
co-interviewing with a friend?
well, co-interviewing with a friend, it's like, what do you believe in? What do you not believe in? Like, what are the most controversial opinions you have, and why? What are the values that you hold? And if you haven't done a values test, go do a values test. There's like 100 free ones on the internet. Figure out what your values are. Like, for example, mine, I didn't even know this until I did a values test. Mine is adventure, growth, and freedom. Like, that is the 3 that are most important for me. And once I knew that, I was able to actually go out and be able to communicate those values to people and align with my tribe. That's why I think both of my business partners here are very much, similar values as that. So what are your values? That's a big one. What do you want your life to look like in 2 years from now? Ask them that. How do you want your career to look? How do you want your personal life to look? What kind of, like, do you want to have a big level of freedom? Do you want to be working in an office, in a cubicle? So future kind of oriented. And then also ask them the question, what has been the biggest impact that you've had on other people in your life, and how did you have that impact? What was the ways in which you changed other people's lives? What your biggest accolades, essentially. From that, you'll get a pretty good idea of your identity, I think.
And I would say, to put the cherry on top, Carey's heard me ask this on every extraction call we have with a client. How do you want people to feel when they come into contact with you and your content? How do you want to come off? It's the simplest question, but it says so much and can fuel so much in the creativity that you're putting out, whether it's written, colors, designs, content topics, because it starts to put together what your voice is, the personality of your brand. You decide on how you want people to feel, how you want to come off to people, and it's going to put this uniformity behind the content that you are putting out and give you a voice that people can start to trust. And it gives you a bit of a powerful feeling of you have a foundation, because I always tell clients to reference back to the answer to that question before you put something out, because it gives you that feeling of, oh yeah, it does match, right? Or, ooh, I can make it maybe a little bit more playful. That's what I'm missing to make it feel like me. It's a great checkpoint for that authenticity.
Wow. Phenomenal value. Thank you. Absolutely great. Yeah, that's a wrap. That was fantastic.
Awesome.